All in, the total cost for me to have dinner at Geranium, the #1 restaurant in the world, was just over $1,000. Have you ever wondered what it's like to visit the #1 restaurant in the world? Well, stick around, you're about to find out. So I traveled all the way to Copenhagen to go to the #1 restaurant in the world, Geranium. It's not only the #1 restaurant in the world, but it also has 3 Michelin stars. So let's get into the rankings a little bit, and I'll explain exactly what the rankings mean and the stars and everything you need to know about those. So the history of the Michelin Guide. It was started in 1900, and the stars were introduced in 1931. Now, this guide was a way to get motorists to go out in their cars and explore the countryside by putting certain sites in the guide. Michelin is the Michelin tire company, so the thinking behind that was, let's put a bunch of restaurants and sites in this guide to get people to go out in their cars, use their tires, and then we'll eventually sell more tires. So that was the basis behind it, or the thinking behind it. And now, fast forward to today, Michelin rates over 30,000 restaurants. So as far as the stars go in the Michelin Guide, you can get either 1, 2, or 3 stars. So 3 stars is the top. Michelin has undercover inspectors that go into restaurants and review them and give them stars. Now, the stars are not based on anything other than food. So to quote the Michelin Guide, restaurant inspectors do not look at the interior decor, table setting, or service quality when awarding stars. 1 star is high quality, worth a stop. 2 stars is excellent, worth a detour, and 3 stars is exceptional, worth a special trip. Michelin also has a ranking system for covers, which are a table and a plate icon. That is indicative of how good service the restaurant has. Michelin also has what they call Bib Gourmand, which is the Michelin man licking his lips. That's a symbol for that, and it was started in 1997. Bib Gourmand is good cuisine at reasonable prices, so 3-course meal for about $40. Now, aside from the Michelin star rating system, there is the World's 50 Best, which was started in 2002. This is where more than 1,000 experts vote on their 10 favorite restaurants all around the world. These experts are food writers, critics, chefs, restaurateurs, and well-traveled gourmets. Each person selects, like I said, their 10 favorite, and then they rank them in order. Now, what they're told to vote on is their best experiences. So it's the whole experience, food to service to decor, everything. Now, every year, about 25% of those voters change, so there's a new batch of people voting every year. Once a restaurant has reached #1, it's ineligible from getting #1 in subsequent years. So it's moved to the best of the best list, and then that list is maintained elsewhere. And then that way it gives new restaurants the ability to climb the ladder and become #1 in the world. So Geranium has been on the world's 50 best list for quite some time, and it's also got 3 Michelin stars several years in a row. And I happened to visit Geranium when it was #1 in the world and 3 Michelin stars at the same time. So here's what booking a reservation for a 3 Michelin star restaurant or a top 10, maybe top 5 in the world restaurant looks like. You have to go on and figure out when they open for reservations. In this particular instance, Geranium opens 3 months in advance to the day for reservations. And so you literally log on to the website. Most of the restaurants are only online now. So it's rare that you can call and make bookings because so many people are trying to get into these places. So you check out the restaurants you want to go to, figure out which ones you're going after, and then my advice, quite literally log on the minute they open up. So there are usually thousands of people trying to get reservations every day on some of the world's best restaurants. So it's not super easy to get, and when you get it, it's a great feeling. In this instance, you have to pay for Geranium $212 deposit per person in advance that will be put towards your dining bill. And this is pretty common for all of the Michelin restaurants that are high-end, or all of the top 50 or top 20 restaurants. Sometimes you have to book through Talk, sometimes you have to buy a ticket and then pay for your actual meal ahead of time in order for them to just really secure the booking. Now, once you book, or once I booked the restaurant reservation at Geranium, I was lucky enough to get it. I looked every day, and some random day became available the morning that I looked, and I got it. So once I get the reservation, then I plan the whole trip backwards from there. It's in Copenhagen. I live in Los Angeles. It's not super convenient, so restaurant first, and then flight. Hotel's easy, there's tons of hotels, but definitely restaurant first and then flight. I ended up taking a trip to Copenhagen with my brother. We dined at not only Copenhagen, but several other multiple Michelin star restaurants, and I made YouTube shorts about each one of those restaurants that you can check out in my stories. Now let's get into the cost of this restaurant. So for one person to have a meal at Geranium, it's $560. That's food only with water. I believe some level of service is included, but I always tip a little bit more on top of a Michelin star restaurant or a top 10 in the world because the service is just crazy good and everyone's so nice. So $560 gets you in the door and gets you the food. Now what you can expect with a restaurant of this caliber or Michelin star dining really is a multi-course meal that's going to span anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5 hours. And I get it, that might seem like a lot of time, but the whole staff is very engaged. You're tasting wine, you're tasting small plates. They're constantly bringing things out. They might take you on a tour of the kitchen or the grounds, talk to you, engage with you about different things, take you to the wine cellar. It really goes by pretty quickly, especially if you're dining with friends or family, loved ones, or people that enjoy these experiences with you. It seems like a long time, but you're basically paying for the experience. It's not your everyday dinner or lunch. And then usually after this, 10, 15, 20 course meal that ends with a lot of desserts, you get a little take-home gift or something for the next morning to eat or something along those lines. That's pretty fun. Now, another thing a lot of people bring up with Michelin star meals is a lot of the dishes look really small. It's like, oh, how can I get full off of that? I promise you, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'3", not skinny. I have a heck of an appetite, and I am stuffed after these dinners because if you think about it, you eat 15 courses. It's just a little couple bites here, a couple bites here, a couple bites here. Do that for 3 hours and you are rolling out of that place. It is so filling. Now the restaurant itself, Geranium. Geranium is actually located on the upper floor of a soccer stadium or a football pitch, whatever you want to call it. My brother and I, who had dinner there, had to walk around the stadium, find the entrance, take the elevator up to the 8th floor, and it's a dining room inside that stadium. And they did allow us to take a tour of the facility after dinner, and there are windows that actually look down onto the soccer field. In my case, it was nighttime, so obviously no one's playing, but it's a really, really cool and pretty unique atmosphere. I've never had a Michelin dinner or lunch in a stadium like that, so that was super unique. The inside is just so wonderfully decorated. It's all Nordic style, a lot of wood, a lot of simple decorations, a lot of calming colors, very elegant, bordering on minimalistic, but I just loved every aspect of the inside. It really suited my, I really liked it. Now I went and got it. I don't know if you can see this, but the menu comes in this little envelope that says Geranium. It's got a wax seal on the back, and then you pull it out. Everything's just super wonderfully presented. It's stamped with the date. You open it up, and it shows everything you're going to eat. In my case, I got the wine pairing with it, so it showed all the wine. But we had, looks like 18 courses. So at first they'll bring out some appetizers, maybe even before the appetizers, what's called an amuse-bouche, which is a chef's a small bite, usually really wonderful flavors, something fun to get the meal started. And then as you'll start to see in some of these pictures, just super elegant presentations of things. Geranium doesn't serve any red meat. They do fish and vegetables and different crustaceans. And honestly, I didn't even research that part of the menu before I went. I just knew it was #1 in the world, and that's sort of on my bucket list. So I decided to book the reservation, but at the time I didn't even notice. It's not like I was longing to eat some red meat or some game during the dinner. In this menu, they actually had 7 different dessert courses, which again seems like a lot, but they're only 2 bites each. So super extravagant menu. Even reading the menu at a place like this doesn't do it justice, because although it will say the ingredients, it really doesn't necessarily always look like that, and the tastes are just out of this world. If you've never dined at a place like this, I highly recommend trying one. It doesn't have to be at this level, but any sort of tasting menu or an imaginative cuisine, it sort of challenges what you think food can be. So I hope these pictures and quick little videos do it justice, because everything just looked brilliant. Now the wine list. So at many of these restaurants, you can elect to have a wine pairing with your dinner, in which they'll pair certain wines with certain courses, and they'll usually set it up at a certain price. So in this case, it's a pretty high-end wine list. The cheapest option for 7 glasses was $310, which is pretty high. I will admit that is a pretty high price for a wine pairing. They had several different layers of wine pairings also, so you could get, I forget what it's called, but the most exceptional wine pairing is over $2,800. You get 7 glasses of wine. Now, these are super rare wines and super great. If you're not into wine, it's not gonna matter to you. If you are into wine and you have money to burn, why not? Because these are super hard wines to get. I did not opt for that, but it exists. The wine list, I have a little video of the book of it. It's quite literally that thick. It's 240 pages, 240 regular size pages. Biggest wine list I've ever seen at any restaurant ever in my life. Biggest wine list I've even seen pictures of. It is crazy. I can't think of anything they don't have on their wine list. And we also got a tour after dinner through part of their wine cellar, and they have such an amazing amount of bottles on site, and then they have a whole nother warehouse off site from which they fill up their wine cellar when it gets low. So final thoughts on this experience for me. I thought it was fantastic. I've been wanting to do this my whole life. I'm 43, so I'm glad I got to do this. I'm glad I got to share it with my brother. It was such a fun experience. All in, the total cost for me to have dinner at Geranium, the #1 restaurant in the world, was just over $1,000. It's just something I save for. Some people save for cars, some people save for other disposable things that they like. I like going to a nice restaurant and experiencing something like this. So for me, one time with a family member, super fun time, made a trip out of it, totally worth it. But $1,000 is a tough pill to swallow. Now, I've been to a lot of Michelin star restaurants. I've been very fortunate, and again, that's sort of what I spend my money on, just traveling around, traveling the world, and going and eating at different spots. And I've been to former #1 restaurants in the world before, but never to a restaurant that was actually #1 at the time that I was eating there. And so that was, it was just thrilling to be there at such a moment, such a peak. To be there at the restaurant's peak was just amazing. Now, personally, I will absolutely do this again. I know the #1 restaurant in the world this year is in Peru. I've already looked into it. It's probably not going to work out, but it's something I keep an eye on. I enjoy reading about chefs and seeing cuisines and watching things develop all over the world. So I definitely hope to go to another #1 restaurant in the future, but really everything has to line up with planning and flights and your ability to take time off work and your savings and all that stuff. So it's pretty rare. I'm very thankful I was able to do it this time, but I am looking forward to it in the future. I get that it's not for everyone. It can be seen as a little stuffy or pretentious, or you got to wear a jacket or you got to look nice, but for me that's part of the experience. It's like I know I feel different when I'm dressed up and I'm sort of in the mood to do nicer things. It's different from a casual night out or someplace local to me that might have wonderful food. And this is nothing against any other restaurant, but it's such a special occasion, sort of dressing up and playing into that vibe. It sort of makes it for me. So beyond the food and beyond everything that comes with a Michelin star restaurant and thinking back about my experience, the #1 thing in my mind, and I've heard a few chefs talk about this, the #1 thing that makes a good dining experience when you're going out with friends or family, or you're going on a date or doing something, it's not usually the food. I mean, the food can't be terrible. It has to be at least good or decent. But the #1 thing is the service and the interaction with the staff. And you will find in these top 50 restaurants in the world and these Michelin star restaurants that also have those little fork and knife icons next to them. The service really makes it. It makes the memory. I can tell you about my sommelier that came to the table and shared all her stories with us and talked to us about wine and the different chefs that came over. It was just, that was the experience for me, the service. In closing, thank you so much for supporting my videos by watching them. Just by watching them and maybe sharing them with your friends, it really means a lot. I love answering questions in the comment section. I'd be happy to give you any input on booking these restaurants or traveling, or what it might be like, or what my favorite destinations have been, or my favorite countries, or the best countries for different foods. Happy to answer any questions you have. If you like this video and you like things like this, consider subscribing to my channel. It would really help me a lot. Like I said, like this video and share it with your friends, please. The more likes and plays I get, the better it helps me do as a content creator, and I hope to make many more of these.